Welcome back to the State of CRM podcast. I'm Matt Engstrom.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're talking about something a little bit different. So we usually talk about email strategy or CRM strategy or how digital marketers can more effectively reach audiences. And today's topic is something pretty important, and it involves talking a little bit about something related to impacts on climate change. And that's something that news cycles cover a lot, but within digital marketing circles and marketing publications and things like that, not so much. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about that. So something I don't think people think about a lot is when they're sending out digital communications such as email, there's actually a carbon footprint that's associated with that. And there's actually ways that we can think about as marketers and consumers as well, reducing and mitigating the impact of digital communications on carbon emissions.
Yeah, and the first thing that impact the carbon footprints for email is really how they are tied to data center. The fact that the content of the email goes through data centers or multiple data centers, and the data centers managing a lot of data, processing the data, storage of the image, these kind of things require a lot of power and a lot of cooling to avoid them to hit too high, and that's obviously a big impact on the carbon footprint. So mainly the three aspects that impact the carbon footprint of an email is the number for image, the size of the images. Second, the time of storage, how long the email are saved and stored on the data center. And the third point is the number of recipients. So the more people are receiving the email, the more copy of the email and images you'll send. So if we think about these 3 points, so number of image are in the creative, number of recipients, and the time of storage. Mainly the two first are really reminding me one of the practice that we are trying to advocate to. I mean, we are advocating to live this practice of batch and blast. And when you think about a skyscraper email sent to a mass audience, I mean, that's ticking all the boxes. So that's a lot of product image or content that's actually not a lot of people want to read, but that's a lot of images, and so more weight and data storage to a lot of people, and most likely a big part of your database won't open it, but won't delete it. So that will be a long time in the data center.
Yeah, it's interesting for me too, because this is something I just recently started thinking about, and I know there's folks at Tiny Clues who actually have given this quite a bit of thought and are pretty passionate about the topic around carbon reduction as it relates to emails and digital communications. And it's something that I've just recently started thinking about, and I think a lot about when I think of carbon emissions. I think of like reducing at-home energy expenditures or buying cars that are gas efficient, but less about how a marketer or a consumer, as it relates to the way that you're being communicated to, actually also has an impact. And so there's some things that we can do. So as Ben mentioned, images are something that take up a lot of storage in a data center. So that's something that actually has a pretty high impact on carbon emissions. And it's also important to note that email is not the only channel that leads to carbon emissions, but it is probably one of the more significant ones. So we're focusing a little bit more on that today. But if you have any questions about other channels, obviously we can talk about that as well. Please just reach out to us. But so the one thing you can do as a marketer is think about when you're sending out like emails. I know you want them to be impactful, but thinking about the images that you're using, and one, making sure that you're optimizing the size of those images, that you're not sending out overly heavy images within each email, because those images are then stored in data centers, and the longer amount of time that they're stored there, the more carbon is released as a result, because as you mentioned, it takes energy to keep those data centers cool and running. Second of all, think about the number of images that you're using as well. As Ben mentioned, sending out long skyscraper emails with tons of different products and offers in one email. We talk a lot about why that's not necessarily a best practice for marketers anyway. If you need another reason not to do that, carbon emissions is one of those. So like obviously the longer an email is, the more content it contains, the more images it contains, the greater the carbon footprint. So just give some thought in terms of whether or not you need to use an image or whether or not an email needs to be as long as it is that you're sending. So think a little bit more strategically about the content that you're creating as it relates to that. One thing that I thought was interesting too, that I had no idea about when we were doing research around this is actually the font that you're using. So I know that every brand has specific fonts that they like to use to create a brand identity. But if you're using sort of a niche font, something that's not standard, basically what that means is that when its server delivers your email, it has to sort of pull in and render niche fonts, which creates more emissions than if you use something standard. It also could potentially, compiled with heavy images, things like that, slow down delivery. So there's also like an experience element as well. So picking a standard font might be best practice to also help you reduce your carbon footprint. And lastly, there's mirrored versions of a lot of different emails to help with efficient delivery. If you have, for example, a multi-market, cross-global campaigns or things that are running, potentially you're using different data centers at different points. The more data centers you're using, the more mirrored versions that you use for various reasons, even if it's creating a good user experience, means more storage, which means more emissions. So just thinking about sort of the size of the email in general, as it relates to images, length, things like that can really help you create practices that reduce the emissions that your communications are affecting.
Yeah, and Matt, I just want to cherry pick the comments on the font. That's a great example where either if you have a niche font, you have this issue you described. That's the server will have to download to pull the font itself to render it. A way to avoid that is to remove the text and use images to put your text into that with the nice fonts and design, but that means you increase the size of the image and the weight of the image, so that's not the solution either. So the real thing is to really keep using a standard font that will really have an impact, because removing the text with the custom font or the special fonts and replacing that by more images is not the solution.
Yeah, and it's what I like about this approach too is, when you're thinking about it, you're also creating a better user experience. So you don't necessarily, this isn't something where you have to choose between the environment or effectively communicating to your customers. You can do both simply by creating efficient communication that's easily readable, et cetera. And I think it's a win-win. So for me, it might require a little bit of extra thought and a little bit of extra work, but it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So the second point was time of storage, and on this point, that's what, as a marketer, what can we really do to reduce that? So for those that are listening also to the French podcast, I had the chance to talk with Jonathan Loriot some months ago. Jonathan is leading an initiative to have an impact on the time the email are saved, are stored on our inbox. And this initiative is well explained on the website. The website is zerocarbon.email. You can check out that. But short story about what the initiative is. The idea behind that is to have an expiration date in commercial email. That means, as a marketer, I want to promote my offers, my products, and send that to my consumer. I have, even for nice targeted email, I have a right audience, but my offer has an expiration date. That can be because actually there is a time limit for the offer, a bundle, a price, a discount, whatever.
Yeah.
A time limit for an incentive to, free shipping, a gift if you purchase more than $150 of product. That can also be the case of that's no longer the season, or I have such a small amount of stock for this or for this product. There are a lot of different reasons that's after 7 days, 10 days, 12 days, 2 weeks, that can be 1 month. There is no way that the content of your communication is still valid.
Yeah.
Not mentioning that your consumer won't go back to your email, but even if they go back to the content of your email, the content and the offer won't be valid. So the idea is to just, as a marketer, set an expiration date technically in the email. So that will be a sign, something that the provider, like Gmail, Hotmail, every provider or inbox provider, webmail, will be able to read and auto-delete the messages. It's not, when we say auto-delete the messages in my inbox, as consumers, how do they impact my inbox? And that's my personal information or thing that I received, the messages that I received. Actually, if the sender say that it's obsolete, it's expired, that's, I mean, they will be able to do that, or at least to prompt a message saying like, oh, you have, 100 messages that's expired. Do you want us to delete that?
Yeah.
That would be awesome. And so the initiative is about that. That's the beginning of the initiative. There are a lot of brands supporting the initiative already. There are ESP and there are ISP. So internet service provider that are supporting the initiative. There are email service provider supporting the initiative. And as a brand, as a marketer, there is no much to do right now but supporting the initiative. Just saying that, if something happens and is built, we will be happy to support and to use that. Because the technical parts need to be developed by a common work between ESP, your provider, the tool you are using to send the message, and the ISP or the webmail. So they need to be aligned on what's the standard way to communicate this date. And there is work to do for them and development to do to add this feature. But to be sure that, and to influence or to help to them to be motivated to do it, the more brands supporting the project, the easier will be, or the highest priority for them will be, that will be the case for them to develop the feature. And so, that's a loop. That's, you won't use it because that's not existing, but for that to exist, you need to support it. So I really invite you to support the initiative. You just need to log to the website or connect to the website zerocarbon.email. There are all the explanation. There are a lot of brands already supporting that initiative, and that's a way to impact and to make things change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, we're marketers, but we're also consumers as well. And I think until we have that opt-in option to say, hey, yes, let's delete these emails after this specific period of time, we can do that manually. Yeah. So I went into my inbox today just to check it out when we were obviously preparing for this, and I think I have 106,000 emails in my personal Gmail right now. So what I'm going to be doing tonight is going in and looking in my promo folder and just deleting all of them, essentially. So it's something you can do on your own as well, and tell other people to do as well, and it'll have an impact until it becomes a little bit more easy and automated through this initiative, which hopefully will take off. Yeah,
same for me. That's I did that when I talked for the first time with Jonathan about the initiative, and my promo tab and my personal Gmail, that was close to 16,000 email. For 12, 14 years of a newsletter received, and it took some time to Gmail to delete everything, but select all and delete the trash. Free up a lot of space. Thousands and thousands of email and images. So that's easy action for now. And as a market, as a consumer, but we can't expect every consumer in your database to do that on their own. So as a marketer, that's really something that we can influence by just setting an expiration date.
Yeah, and there, I mean, it's a measurable cost to emissions as well.
Yeah.
If you check out the blog on tinyclues.com, there's actually one that kind of will go through the calculations, and I believe a 10-fold increase in the emails sent is about a 4-fold increase in carbon emissions, if I'm stating that correctly. So it is something that is a significant act that you can do to reduce carbon.
Yeah.
And kind of thinking about that as well, the last point is really the number of recipients that you're sending it to, and this kind of goes back to putting your marketer hat on, and how you can reduce or mitigate emissions is really around thinking about the volume you're sending. And that essentially means moving away from batch and blast or spam and pray, or whatever you want to say, basically. And there's tons of content that we've already done to talk about how to not do this. There'll be tons more in the future as well, but thinking about basically targeting and segmentation. No matter how sophisticated you currently are, getting the right relevant messaging for the right relevant products in front of the right people is a way to reduce batch and blast. You don't need to be sending everything out to every single person in your database every single day. It's about picking the right communications at the right time. And even if that's basic segmentation, because that's where you're at right now, or if you've moved towards or are looking to move towards a model where you're actually using sophisticated AI to help predict buying intent, even better. But basically, it just means thinking about targeting and then reducing the number of people or contacts included within each campaign. Keeping your messages relevant means you actually can reduce the number or the amount of carbon that your email campaigns are influencing. And on top of it, kind of going back to the win-win situation we were talking about earlier, it also is a better experience for your customers, because you're ultimately going to drive more conversions, drive more revenue, and reduce fatigue. So it's a win-win for marketers, and something that you can start actioning tomorrow to help the environment.
100%. So as a conclusion, let's recap what you said. That's first, as a marketer, you can really have an impact on reducing the carbon footprint by educating yourself and your stakeholder in the company about the impact of your practice, of your email practice or marketing practice, but especially email, as we are talking about email. So that's something to share internally, and working on your strategy, improving the CRM strategy, reducing the number of batch and blast, and working to be more customer-centric. And so reducing the number of message of the people receiving one message, and just keeping that to people with interest for the message will reduce the global number of message sent, and that will have a huge impact. Second point is, as a consumer, there is an easy step for now to do, is to just look at your inbox, and do you really need to keep these messages in your inbox? I mean, even though you have a duped and you don't want to delete recent messages, I mean, select everything that's older than the last month. Just ask yourself, how many times did you read an email, a promotion email, a newsletter from a brand or a retailer that has more than 2-3 weeks. That's 2 or 3 weeks old. So you can delete that and save a lot of space in your inbox, and therefore in the data center. And third, the important part is, as marketer, support the zero carbon email initiative, because that's what will have a big impact, because we can't really count on every individual to delete their message from their inbox. And as a marketer, we can give sign to provider to make that at scale. Because if you are managing a database of millions of consumers, 12 million, 15 million of consumers, you will be able to impact and reduce the impact of your communication for this entire database with only one information. And for that, we need to help to influence and to share and to work and to support the initiative to work together to have this expiration date marker in the email.
Yep.
Okay. I hope that was interesting discussion for everyone. We are, as usual, open to feedback, comments, idea of topic, follow up on this particular topic. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. Matt or myself are on LinkedIn, responsive to the message.
Yep.
You can email us if you want. You will find the email on the website easily. Just let us know what are the topics you are interested in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Love to hear from you. And we will see you next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.